All right, Brendan. So, what would be your game for remaster sequel?
You mean besides Rockstar Table Tennis?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
I never
Nice
played
plug.
that, guys. I never played
It's
it.
backwards compatible, Josh. Go buy it. We can play
We
ping
said that in
pong.
the remaster episode. That's the plug. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Citizen Gaming Podcast. I'm Tim.
Hey guys, this is Josh.
And I'm Brenden.
So this episode is going to be about games that we'd like to see remade or have sequels added to them. Before we do that, though, of course, we're going to jump right into news. Only thing that I kind of really wanted to mention that I saw that was kind of big over the past couple weeks is PlayStation is going to try and come up with their own version of Game Pass. I think that's really going to be good for Xbox's Game Pass itself and PlayStation. Competition is always really good when you can have two companies like this kind of going head to head on something. I think that as far as us as the consumer, the player, we're only going to get better games from here as PlayStation and Xbox are going to kind of butt heads and they're going to try and fight for this position of who has a better Game Pass style system.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a. It only, like you said, it only if I can word this correctly, it's only better for the consumer and better for the gaming public in general, just because if competition works out correctly, it can kind of push both companies to pull off some, good feats. But
Yeah.
that also could be a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is PlayStation's got some big hurdles to overcome first off, just because Game Pass has been around for a while and already offers so much value for money. So, like, whenever this thing launches eventually, like, it's going to have to be on the jump for basically point for point the same thing that Game Pass is already doing. Because if it doesn't, like, then it's going to struggle out of the gate and they're going to have a hard time keeping up with Xbox. But that being said, again, like you guys just said, like, it's definitely a cool thing, especially for us as consumers, to have a service like that to hopefully, or especially for PlayStation people to have a service like that that will hopefully, compete with Game Pass on that level.
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely going to have to come out the gate and start swinging.
Yeah.
If they half-ass it or if they don't bring heavy hitters, it's going to flop, and Xbox is going to continue to rule in that aspect of, the Game Pass and
Or
you
if it
pay
costs too
$10 a month
much.
for free games. Yeah.
Even if it costs too
They
much.
need
If
to-
they don't price it competitively, then, again, dead in the water. Like,
Yeah.
So the most they're looking at is what, maybe $15 a month? Because Game Pass Ultimate is $15.
yeah, Game Pass Ultimate is 15.
They're
So
going for like 3 tiers, right?
I have no idea. I think they're still in the early stages of developing this. So I don't think that there's anything set in stone. Everything right now is more or less just guesswork. But it could be multiple tiers. In theory, I mean, with Game Pass Ultimate, you get Game Pass for console, you get your Xbox Live Gold, and you get your Game Pass for PC. So in theory, like, the PlayStation version could skew a little cheaper since you're only getting games on PlayStation.
Yep.
Unless they're really gonna... I mean, PlayStation has been moving some of their stuff to PC lately, but it's mostly stuff that's several years old. So, like, I mean, if they're charging the same amount but you're getting less, that's also going to be a bit of a detriment to them.
Yeah. I mean, they need to. I would imagine they would have to come out swinging with like day one releases of their exclusives onto that service. I couldn't imagine that that service surviving if they don't do something similar to that.
Yeah.
And not even just. Go ahead, Brendan.
I was just saying, it is basically going to have to match everything that Xbox is already doing, or at least be very close. Like, they cannot do half measures and half acid, or it will not work because
Yeah.
Game Pass is already so good for its value. Like, it's insane.
I heard one of the main things there. I mean, I don't know if this is concrete or not, but one of the main things they're gonna use this service for that is to bring backwards compatibility into like an actual thing for PlayStation users. Because I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they have much when it comes to backwards compatibility, and never really have.
uh, that depends. I mean, PlayStation 2 had backwards compatibility with PlayStation 1. Some PlayStation 3s had backwards compatibility with PS2 and
Mm-hmm.
PS1, but they all had compatibility with PS1, I think. PS4 had none. Now PS5 has a pretty large amount of the PS4 library, but not all of it. There's still some like odd ones missing here and there, and
Yeah.
um, I mean, I don't know how that would work. Like
Cloud
they can't.
service.
I mean, I don't know how. I mean, unless it's its complete own separate app service thing, that I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah.
Because it can't, like, the backwards compatibility doesn't exist currently
It took Microsoft a
on
while
PlayStation
to
5.
perfect.
Well, I mean, again, Xbox went above and beyond with that one because somehow they even got the physical discs to still work, which is just insane. Like
That
they did,
is.
like they did
Yeah.
not need to do that. The fact that I can put in like original Xbox like Crimson Skies into my Xbox Series X and it'll still work is absolutely bonkers.
That is,
Um,
honestly, if you think about it.
it really is. Uh,
It's
so I don't know.
pretty cool that they did that though.
Oh, it's tremendous. Like that's a huge win for them. Just it's again such a player first, player forward move that
Yeah.
gets them. I mean, it gets them goodwill, but it doesn't like that doesn't earn them money. Like again, like if I had a 20-year-old copy of Crimson Skies, like cool, you guys didn't make $10-15 because I already had the disc, but like it is a really cool move that the physical disc still works.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, like,
it's something
go ahead,
PlayStation
Brandon.
needs to work on anyways. This it's this weird thing where for some reason, despite the fact having one of the weakest back catalogs, Xbox has the best backwards compatibility. Like Nintendo really dropped the ball this generation, and so did Sony, honestly, by not having real full-fledged backwards compatibility. Nintendo is the Switch Online, Nintendo Online, because they have theirs locked behind their online subscription service, which is garbage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you have to pay for the online subscription, which isn't that bad because it's only $20 a year.
That's not too bad.
But yeah, like their whole backwards compatibility is locked behind that, and it's just a selection of games. And forget all the stuff that you bought before. Too bad, so sad. And then PlayStation is a bit better because like a lot of the digital purchases transferred over. A lot of the PS4 discs and stuff work, but almost anything before PS4, if it wasn't already available on the PlayStation Store, because they have some stuff that they like redid and just put up on the PlayStation Store. But again, it's a very handful of select games, and it's not a lot. It's just weird that out of all of them, Xbox is doing the best with backwards compatibility and trying to keep those older games alive and still
Yeah.
playable and viable.
Well, it's one of the most unique things. I think, like you were saying, like a huge win is like, I mean, depending on how how people collect the physical copies. I mean, ranging from like just the basic case to like the steel cases for those special pre-orders. It holds a lot of I would say nostalgic value to the owners to where they could just pop that open and throw it into their Xbox and feel that feel that feeling essentially.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, like Xbox went above and beyond on that one, and
Yeah.
even Phil Spencer, who's like the head of Xbox, was shocked when he found out that that was a thing that could happen. Like he was like,
That's
guys,
pretty
we just
cool.
need to make backwards compatibility a thing, and they were like, okay. And then apparently they came back to him later. He's like, so we got the discs to work, and he was like, I'm sorry, what?
I'm sure that is not what he was thinking when he said, "Let's make backwards compatibility.
Yeah, he was just trying to get digital only and make sure that, like, as it was on the Xbox One, like you could play 360 games and then eventually some original Xbox games and yada yada.
Yeah.
And
I know.
their backwards compatibility still isn't perfect. Like, it still definitely has some holes, but it's still way better than what everybody else is doing.
And I'm waiting for Fable 2 to get that FPS boost. Still waiting patiently.
You might be waiting a while too.
I know.
I don't know what their plan is.
Long wait for a train don't come.
Yeah.
And so last night, December 9th, the awards, video game awards was last night. I didn't watch it. I just saw kind of clips on Twitter about, certain games winning certain prizes, but I know that it was really heavy on trailers and announcements and things like that.
The overall winner of the night, game of the year, was It Takes Two, published by EA, made by Hazelight. They're the same guys who made A Way Out and Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. It's cool that they won, and I mean it's a much smaller game, and it beat out a lot of heavy hitters, which is good for them. But yeah, good God, so many announcements, so many.
What they announced, Alan Wake 2, that people have been crying for a long time. That's like a slated 2023, I believe.
Yeah, and they're saying it's going to go in a bit of a different direction and be like survival horror instead of more like action adventure-y, kind of like Alan Wake 1 and Control was.
Yeah, and they announced a brand new Star Wars project too. Some timeline of High Republic or something.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little disappointed in this because it's being made by Quantic Dream, and
who are they? Please elaborate. I have no idea.
I know they make heavy like story-based cinematic games. So like they made Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and then like Detroit Become Human.
Okay.
Like they're very narrative heavy, like these like heavy choice driven games where your choice can branch off into a bunch of different pathways and stuff, and it's still very early on. Like the trailer was just pure cinematics, but I don't know. Every Quantic Dream game basically plays the same. So if you like Quantic Dream, good news for you. If you don't, like I kind of don't anymore, then it's a little disappointing. But
damn,
that's my.
So is your skepticism coming from more of like you're afraid that this is going to be, like I said, heavily based off of choices you make, and not so much as like an RPG action adventure type game? Is that where you're kind of like your hang up is at?
No. My hang up is just that every Quantic Dream game is the same. Yeah, like it's literally the same. They have done nothing new in any of their games, and they've been making games for like 15 years now. None of their games are bad. Like their games are gorgeous. The stories are usually, pretty darn good and well written and definitely well acted. It's just I don't know, especially after their last game, which was Detroit Become Human. I just don't think I care about them anymore personally. It's just one of those things where it's just like if they're not going to do anything new, then like why am I also thought the narrative to Detroit Become Human sucked. But
maybe taking on Star Wars is their way to kind of rebrand and rejuvenate the studios.
Well, that's the thing. Like I'm cool with it just because the Star Wars license is no longer under EA's thumb. So now, because of that, we're getting a whole bunch of different takes on Star Wars, a whole bunch of new types of Star Wars games, and that's nothing but good. Like even if some of them turn out to be garbage, like it means that one publisher is not holding Star Wars under its thumb. So I mean, now we can get like crazy, weird narrative choice you know, dialogue-heavy games, which is cool, set in the Star Wars universe. You know,
Yeah.
this is also what's helping us get that Knights of the Old Republic remake, and well, Jedi Fallen Order 2 is coming anyway, and that one's under EA's banner still. But like, it's a good thing that it's happening. I'm just saying personally, I have reservations because I don't really care about Quantic Dream.
Yeah, I mean, what also is a nice thing about it is most of these Star Wars projects is they're aiming to canonize them
Yeah,
to the universe, which is
yeah,
cool.
it'll be interesting.
With Star Wars,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
with Star Wars not falling underneath EA some anymore, we'll kind of circle back to like we said with Game Pass is, even though Quantic Dream may flop on it, this brings in that whole competition aspect now. So we might get a lot better Star Wars titles coming out
From different companies.
Oh yeah,
different companies working on them.
and I'm all for that. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is this will give us different Star Wars games from different perspectives with different people and made by different teams, and
Yeah.
ideally this will also get us more original ideas. Just not to say that like Jedi Fallen Order or Battlefront was like bad or anything, but like Battlefront was very much a follow up to the older Battlefronts that came out on like the PS2 and the Xbox. And Fallen Order was very much like baby's first Dark Souls with Star Wars skin.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Squadrons.
And we did get Squadrons eventually, which was a bit of a bringing back of Rogue Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think it's cool. It just means we're gonna get some new and different takes on Star Wars. They won't all be just like generic and like obvious. Like might get some really weird, goofy stuff. And,
Yeah, it was stuff we didn't know we needed. We'd be like, oh wow, all right.
yeah, just stuff out of left field, stuff that's doesn't have anything to do with the movies.
Yeah.
Or one that'll kind of when we transition there, one of Josh's games he'd like to see remade. It's going to open up the opportunity.
It's possible.
I'm not gonna reveal it just yet, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
It may either allow that game to be remade by a different studio, or someone make something similar to it.
Yeah.
Yes. One can only hope.
We're also getting a Wonder Woman game.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Which is going to be made by Monolith. It's the same guys who make Middle Earth: Shadow of Mordor and Middle Earth: Shadow of War. This is just like a 40-second teaser. It really didn't show much, but it's cool that it exists and that it's coming. Like,
that is neat.
And it's going to use they even said it's going to use the Nemesis system that exists in Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor.
Ooh, no way.
Yeah.
God, that system was so beautiful.
So that'll be cool.
Yeah. Tim, that's another game you got to give a shot.
We need to definitely get into this on another episode. We've been talking about it. I'm really skeptical about movies turned video games because I've played some horrible games that were based off of movies or tried to reflect movies. So
that's
I tread lightly.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a fair concern.
For sure.
It really is. But it's not directly Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War are not directly based off of the movies. They sort of take place around them ish.
Right.
But I mean they're tremendous games. They stand well enough on their own. They're so good.
They really are.
Shadow of Mordor more so. Shadow of War was still good, but
more of DLC.
I mean, it was just kind of more of the same, and then they just kind of threw in a bunch of like more of it because that game takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
There's also announced the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, which is going to be like the Friday the 13th game apparently, except Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's interesting.
Got the first full trailer for the Halo TV show.
Oh, I saw that. It actually looks pretty good.
It does.
Go ahead.
I don't know. It was still the teaser was still very vague and didn't really set up anything. So like, it's the whole thing's still kind of a mystery. But you do see Master Chief, and he looks a
I'm
lot like Master Chief. So points for that.
I wonder if the voice actor is gonna voice him or
I don't
not.
think so. I don't believe he is.
They did that in that Halo 4 Until Dawn. He didn't voice that version of Chief.
Yeah,
Probably not this one, I would guess too.
I don't think so.
You said we also got a new trailer for the Elden Ring.
Yes, a new cinematic trailer for Elden Ring, uh, from Software, uh, Hidetaka Miyazaki's new game. Um, the guy who made is responsible for Dark Souls and Sekiro and Bloodborne. Um, it was just a cinematic trailer, which I don't know is a little funny because the beta came out already, so like you know what gameplay looks like, but it was just
Yeah.
but still look cool. Yeah, definitely interesting. Um, we also got two new Sonic trailers. One for the new game, Sonic Frontiers, and then the teaser for the new Sonic movie.
Yeah.
Um, those both look pretty solid.
They do, honestly. And I believe they showed gameplay. I mean, I don't know if it was gameplay footage. I didn't look into much
No,
about
it
it.
wasn't gameplay.
For Hellblade? No?
Oh, for Hellblade, yeah, that was
Okay,
gameplay
okay.
footage. Yeah, new trailer for Hellblade Senua's Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga. Confusing naming structure.
It looked really good, honestly.
I mean, the first one was a standout in the last
Yeah.
generation. That game was gorgeous, so there's no reason this one shouldn't be either.
Yeah, you
Tying
guys-
back to what you said just a second ago, before I swapped it to Hellblade, what is the Sonic project that they're working on?
It's just called Sonic Frontiers. It's apparently going to be supposed to come out in May. It's going to come out on everything. Um, and apparently it's going to be the first one that's going to be like kind of open world-ish, sort of.
Okay.
Mhm.
Like instead of just the following the linear paths that basically every other Sonic game has done, it's going to have a bit more open feel to it, which will be interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, they did that with Halo's campaign, and it's been pretty great so far. So, I mean,
Oh yeah, how did we not mention that Halo's campaign was released this
Yeah.
week
Yeah.
also?
that as well. I'm not far into it, but I've gotten to the exploration part, and it's pretty
I've
fun.
Well, then I'm definitely farther than you are, because I've made it a few missions in. Um, actually I heard that apparently they cut down the world size. Apparently it was like this is about like 1/3 of what the original map was supposed to be like.
No way.
Really?
Yeah, they cut it down because apparently it was too. They needed to narrow their focus, and there was just like too much going on. So they were like, we just need to cut all this
Dang.
extra stuff out of the game so they could narrow their focus and actually like finish the game and make it as good as it should be,
Yeah.
which is fine.
So I wonder if
I have zero problem with that.
they're going to sit on that and then kind of release that down the road as DLC, or if they're just going to scrap all that extra.
uh,
That's a good
I'm-
question.
I mean, I guess it's possible they could release it later as like DLC or something, but I mean, again, it's it's something I've talked about a little bit before is just having bloat in games, like just having games there for game's sake, like, and I would rather have a much more tighter, smaller open world that's tighter and more focused
Yeah.
on like what the game actually wants me to do than just having a giant open world where I can just do the same thing a million times. Like,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly okay with them cutting that out to make, again, like I said, they were focusing in on what they wanted the campaign to be and the story and yada yada yada.
Yeah. It looks real good, and it feels really good, and the open world stuff with what you can do in it I don't know. It's such a unique flavor to the game. That's where it's like you're running around and you're doing your thing, and it's just so badass. I don't know. I'm really enjoying it so far, though.
I still need to get in and play it. I still got my log of games that I'm playing, so I'm trying not to start
Building
anything
up.
new.
It's getting taller.
I might have to just get in it and play it just to screw around, just to see what it's like, you know.
Hey, dude, that's what gaming is about, honestly, man. Just fucking bounce around from games. Excuse my, cussing and stuff like that. But that's how I kind of. I mean, maybe it's not the best thing to do all the time, but I bounce around a lot.
I mean, I think it depends on the person. Like, you bounce around all the friggin' time, but like I can't really do that too much because otherwise I lose the thread and then I just lose focus and then I end up not finishing stuff.
That's why I have a bad back catalog.
I can't bounce around either because then I kind of forget where I was at in a game, or I forget like the controls. I try to stick to something.
Warzone.
Let's not even bring that up. Remember, we told Brenden we weren't going to talk about it, Josh.
Oh shit!
And I think this platform counts as not talking about it right now.
I mean, you said talking about it to me in general. As long as I can hear it, it counts.
Yeah.
All right, well that doesn't count, okay? You had a momentary deafness right there when Josh mentioned that name.
I definitely did not, but we can move on.
Okay, so if you guys if you guys don't have any else, breaking, we can kind of transition into today's episode.
Only other thing, real quick, PUBG is apparently going free to play now.
Ooh.
Oh, yep, that's right.
It's the only really major thing. There's a lot of other cool stuff at the Game Awards that got announced that we just didn't mention. But yeah, we need to actually get into the meat of this episode, so we'll leave it. But
yes.
Well, hot damn.
So I'm going to preface this episode by kind of stating what we mean by remake, because we put our definition out there of what we said as remaster. So remake is going to be a game where they remake it, so they're going to update graphics, update physics, bring in new content, bring in more content.
From the ground up, basically, the game needs to be more or less rebuilt.
It could, and this can, mirror games that, ended long ago, 20, 30 years ago. Is, the reference to a remake or remaster is what we're talking about bringing back.
Yeah.
And then a sequel, I think, kind of speaks for itself. It's a sequel. A game that you would like to see a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of. That's what we mean by that, is not necessarily the original game, but take that premise of the game or that idea of the game and make another one, and whatever the studio decides to do with it, see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, so what would be your first game that you would like to see remade or have a sequel to it?
Okay, so we kind of played around with this earlier with the Star Wars talk. Star Wars pod racing or pod racer. Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer was the first one that I ever played. And, that came out when I was like 1999, I believe.
And it's 99 or 2000.
Something like that. And they did eventually have a sequel or something similar to that. I forget, that was like, what was the name to it? It was Star Wars Racer Revenge, I believe.
Yeah.
It was the sequel, or just, another game that was either a sequel or something similar to that. But that's specifically the Star Wars pod racing scene. Mentioning what, a few of our episodes we've mentioned how we like racing games, how I like racing games. And when I played Star Wars pod racing, I thought that was the neatest thing ever. Just being able to be in a pod racer, going ridiculous speeds, traversing through the tracks or whatnot. If they could bring that back, especially with like all the technology they have, and just bring it to the modern time, it may be a sequel or just, a whole new, shot at, the pod racing scene. I would kill, like, just slam my money on the desk type stuff. Just bam, bam, bam. Like, I'll just take my money. Announce something like that. I'm all for it. I don't know. Did you guys play that Star Wars Pod Racer back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
I played the Pod Racer game when it came out, and I completely agree. I think that game coming back with everything that they could do now that they couldn't do back in, what was it, 2000 and was it 2000 or 99?
I believe it ranged from like
2000.
20 or 2002 to 1999 is when those two games came out.
Well, episode 1 was definitely like 99 or 2000.
Yeah.
Racer Revenge, I don't remember.
I think it was 2002. I believe I have it pulled up. Was the Racer Revenge? Yeah, 2002 is when that came out.
Now, this did get technically, I wouldn't even say it remastered. I think they just ported it pretty much, and so now you can at least play it on modern consoles and PC and stuff, which is cool.
Thanks to you, that's the reason why I do have it on Xbox, and I have messed around with it, and it's fantastic still, honestly.
Yeah, I mean I would agree. It's definitely one of the Star Wars gems, because there's a lot of Star Wars games, and a lot of them are terrible. And a lot of bad games in particular came out of the Episode 1 and Episode 2, Episode 3 era, but Star Wars Pod Racing is probably the best one out of them. If not, it's got to be in the top couple for sure. Like, that game came out of left field and just, yeah, I mean, kind of lightning in a bottle, really. Just did everything right. You know, you had to watch your engines because they'd overheat or, you know, explode if you ran into too much stuff.
Yep. Because there was that little gauge of that showed you like your engine layout and which one's taking most damage as you're smacking off of things.
Yeah, it was definitely unique. I mean, it still is, really, honestly.
Well, yeah, because it came out. I mean, you know, Mario Kart's always been hot, so you know the fact that Nintendo had a Star Wars pod racing racer game, you know, around I mean, I believe from that time frame to even past that, racing games were a very dominant thing within the gaming genre. So that for me, I played so much of that Star Wars pod racer.
Yeah.
Well, and it was a different aspect on racing too. It wasn't racing cars. It was
it's unique.
Racing these fantasy vehicles. You know, it was unique, absolutely.
And let alone slapping Star Wars on it, that always helps.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I didn't know I needed. I mean, back watching episode 1 and seeing the pod racing, oh, that's so sick. And then that game just coming out of nowhere like that. And I was like, well, I didn't know that was a scratch I needed itching as a kid, but you know what? I took it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If you build a game right, regardless of what it is, it can really stand the test of time and be remembered for being unique and different and whatever. But that's definitely what that game did. Like, I'm pretty sure that game was not supposed to be that good. Like, I would wager they got handed that project and they're like, make this. This came out of episode 1. People like Star Wars, and that team was just like, okay. And then they made that, and I mean, nothing but applause and good vibes for that, because that was really just out of left field. The game it really is pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's just like with what that game offered back then, with like the having the opportunity to choose different pod racers you wanted to race as in each race and which ones you've unlocked as you progress through the sort of storyline it had, which was based on like different tracks racing on different planets and whatnot.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the scope of detail they could go into, even maybe creating your own pod racer? If they brought it back, God, that would be cool.
That's one thing I was going to kind of say is like they could really bring in that customization aspect, and they could even take it a step further. And you'd have to win parts, or maybe even do like a kind of free roaming type thing where you have to go and scavenge parts for these pod racers. Because if you remember, like Anakin, he built his pod. He didn't go and buy it, so obviously he had to go scavenge for these parts. So they really could bring in like that aspect and bring it like a whole economy and market ship into that game, which would be amazing.
God, that would be sick. I mean, even look at the pink slip thing. If you think of like episode 1 when Qui-Gon they throw those bets down, like, my ship for the, like, you could think they could bring in, like, an economy, like you were saying, to where, like, you win pod racers off of a race, and just that whole shebang of, like, just that, smuggler's market, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, the outlaw kind of vibe and culture to it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
yeah, it's tremendous, and those, I mean, we mentioned a little bit, but those courses were absolutely insane. I mean, the Tatooine one is the one that everybody's played at least once, because, it's the first level, and
Yeah.
that's when everyone wanted to race anyway, but, like, some of those later levels are just, I mean, one, difficult, and two, like, just really well designed and really fun and unique.
Yeah, I mean, they even brought in, like mentioning that Tatooine track. They even brought in, that scene from the movie where Anakin ramps up into the air. They had that stuff in a lot of the tracks too, where you could, like,
That,
sky ramp your pod, essentially.
yeah, that Tatooine map was weirdly accurate.
It was
There's,
actually, if you think about it.
It really was. Like, if you watch the movie and then go play that level, like, I mean, I'm not saying it's like a perfect one-to-one recreation, but, like, almost everything that happens in that pod race happens in that first level.
Yeah, exactly. No, it really does. Like, the one that stood out for me is when you get to those, I don't know what you would call it, but, like, it's not the canyons, but where they have all those, like, rock structures and you have to, like,
Yeah.
weave in and out of them. Yeah,
Yep.
that stuck out for me from the movie.
To be fair, they did have a pretty good blueprint from episode 1 to create, that level.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because there was a lot of detail. Because you watched that entire race from start to finish. It wasn't like skipping anything. So you saw the entirety of, like, what just how the track worked in the movie.
Well, I mean, in the movie, that was a very notable scene that kind of set up, the rest of that miniseries.
I mean, that's also a testament to, again, the developers of this, because, again, like, they had to make an entire game out of, like, a 10-minute scene. I don't know how long the actual scene goes, but, I mean, it's maybe
Probably
10,
around there, yeah.
20 minutes tops. I doubt it's even that. Like, develop an entire game out of this 10-minute scene. Okay.
Well, even creating the other maps they created out of thin air, kind of, but, like, taking reference from, like, the planets or things that were potentially, within the lore or just within the realm of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which was unique as well.
Well, and it's nice that Star Wars has been around for forever, so they definitely was able to pull those references from the other movies. And,
Yeah.
There's been books, there's been...
The Legends content.
I believe there was comics at some point. They have so much inspiration they could draw from.
I mean,
Star
even
Wars
they-
has
they can-
hit.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Brennan. No.
Well,
Star
well,
Wars. I mean, Star Wars has hit, like, so many diverse avenues throughout its. It's. I mean, it's been around since before I was live. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it's
been everywhere.
Well, that's part of it too. Is that the beauty of Star Wars is also, like, you can just kind of, like, I don't think some of those levels I don't think are, like, real canonical places. Like, some of them is just stuff they made up.
Yeah.
But that's also the beauty of it, is that you can make those things up and it still works within the lore, because it's in a giant galaxy, so you can just be like, oh, this planet's over there somewhere because we said it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I
fits
mean,
within.
like, this is, like, with Jon Favreau and the Mandalorian series, like, he specifically said there's so much rich content that you can just play with, that just because of the universe, and just what's not there and what can be made to be there, essentially.
Yeah. It's essentially a place where anything is possible. And I mean, we can go on a whole other tangent about Star Wars, but that's not
That's
what
a
this
whole
is
new
for.
thing. Yeah. That's a whole
We
new.
definitely
That's a
could
whole
dive
nother
deep
episode
into
we
it.
can really do, honestly.
Yep. All right, Brendan. So, what would be your game for remaster sequel?
You mean besides Rockstar Table Tennis?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
I never
Nice
played
plug.
that, guys. I never played.
It's backwards compatible, Josh. Go buy it. We can play
We
ping
said
pong.
the remaster episode. That's the plug.
Anyway, although I will actually be talking about another 360 game. 360 and PS3. It's a game called Alpha Protocol. Came out in 2010. It was made by Obsidian Entertainment, um, which a lot of people know now as the guys who made Fallout New Vegas. They made Outer Worlds, and they're big RPG guys, basically.
Hmm.
Um, Alpha Protocol is the quickest explanation I could probably give is if you made Mass Effect, but instead of like space and science fiction and all that, you are James Bond. Is the short version.
Oh, okay,
Okay, that's
okay.
fair.
Um, so it is just like Mass Effect, like it's a narrative, like story-driven action shooter RPG. But you are a spy inside of this agency that is called Alpha Protocol. Um, and um, I'll take it as a remake or a sequel because either would work. Um, but your choices matter drastically. It also um, it is mostly level based, but there's a bit in between. Because again, you're a spy, so you're the main thing you need is intelligence. So what you like, I don't mean like you being smart, which I mean does help, but just like so if you don't play it correctly or if you don't use your resources correctly, um, you can walk into a situation blind, and then you might have to might have to turn the game into a shooter and shoot your way out because you couldn't find what you were looking for, or you didn't know where the guards were posted, or stuff like that. Um, so you have to. It kind of gets into the. I mean, you're not doing the day to day of being a spy, but it gets into some of the smaller minutia of being a spy. So again, like you need to field intelligence reports. You might need to go run a couple side missions to, um, you know, steal a couple things to make your next mission easier. You might need to, um, and like all this happens at like your little hub, which is like the apartment you're staying in or your safe
Yeah.
house. Um, but then, you got to go out and then do these missions, and it's set up. There's basically 5 major, I guess, arcs you would say in the game. There's the first one where you start, which is like, the tutorial you're training for the game and like your first actual mission. And then after that, you're given the option to go to one of 3 different places, and you can do them in any order that you want to. Uh, you can, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter necessarily which one you pick. Like they can be completed in any order, and you won't get locked out of another one because you did this one first or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but one of my favorite parts about Alpha Protocol was uh, you had a reputation. Again, something similar to Mass Effect, especially in Mass Effect like 2 and 3.
Hmm.
Um, but instead of it just being a generic meter that you have and that lets you do your Paragon or Renegade actions, um, it actually affects your relationships with the other people in this game. Um,
Okay.
so, like, at one point, I went and did this. I did. Which one did I do? Oh, yeah, I did this Italian uh, arc, the set of missions in Italy. Um, I should say once you do it, you're like locked in, so you have to do all the stuff in Italy before you leave. So I
Okay.
do that, and in there I do some story-related stuff, and then I have to go choose the next mission or the next arc after I finish that one, and I choose to go to the Russia section. And because of what I did in Italy and the choices that I made there, when I got to Russia, I had a few of the characters there knew about me already because of what I'd done in Italy, so they were already predisposed to,
Your
uh,
choices.
yeah. So like,
Okay.
um, so I mean, just from my own personal experience, like I played mostly a good guy, So I made some choices to save some lives, and then I get to Russia, and I meet this uh, mercenary lady who's like, I mean, kind of a stereotypical Russian. Um, but she's like, oh, why'd you save those people, blah, blah, blah. So she just starts off disliking me because of choices that I had already made.
Ooh.
Um, which I just think is a real unique mechanic. Um, and that is something that wouldn't have happened. Like, she would have been completely neutral to me had I gone to Russia first. Um,
Oh, okay.
or, had I made different decisions in Italy, I could have gone and talked to her, and she would have been way nicer to me, and, maybe given me the thing that I needed instead of trying to, you know, berate me or, not giving me the thing that I wanted or was getting from her or
Because
whatever.
she was judging you.
Yeah, she didn't like the
Yeah.
choices I made. Um, and that plays out through the entire game. You have, all the major characters each have this this disposition to you based on you and your choices and how those characters, are. There are some good characters who, would see my good deeds and be like, "Oh, I heard about that thing you did in Italy. That was awesome. I'm really glad you did that. That really, helped me out or, saved me on the back end. So here's, what do you need? I'm here to help you." But then, again, the opposite side of that is like, "I can't believe you did that in Italy. You totally boned me. I hate you guts. Fuck off, eat lead."
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's cool. I love that when it comes to like Mass Effect and things of like with you just like games that like take your choices seriously and kind of like build just the experience off that stuff. That is so sick.
So I got
Not a lot of games. I mean, not a lot of games do that kind of stuff. I mean, there are a lot, but there's not a lot I've personally played where I'm just like, holy shit, like because of that, really, because of what I chose. Oh.
I got a couple questions for you, Brendan.
Yeah, yeah.
First, is this game like worldwide? Are you in different countries? You mentioned
Yeah.
Italy and Russia, but are you in other ones too? Germany, Chile,
It's
America, Canada, things
um
like that.
like I said, there's like five major arcs.
Okay.
And like I said, once you pick one, you're kind of stuck into it.
Okay.
The first one is the one you have to do because that's like training at the facility, which is the tutorial, and then you get like your first real mission. And that is
Okay.
set. It's in the Middle East somewhere. I don't remember the specific country. Um, it's
Okay.
set in the Middle East somewhere. And then yeah, I think it's Italy, Russia, and Thailand, if I remember right, are the other
Okay.
three. And then
And
the last one is like the final sequence arc, um, and that kind of does its own thing.
and then is this game like a free roaming open world type game, or is it like more linear?
No,
Linear.
it's linear and level based. Like in between every mission, you go back to your safe house, and like there you can, you'll get money and stuff from your agency, and then you can also like sell the stuff that you picked up, or maybe use it yourself if you need it. But then you can pay for like intelligence reports to help you on missions, which like I kind of mentioned earlier, which is again just a small little detail that I think is really cool. Instead of just like you know walking in knowing stuff, just being a video game basically like, oh, here's the objective, you know where it is, so you can go get it. The game makes you get these well, it doesn't make you, but you can get these intelligence reports that actually fill in those gaps. Because if you don't get them, then you don't know where stuff is. You don't know like the guard schedule. You don't know like where the guards are posted. You don't know the layout of the building if you don't get the intelligence report for that either. So you have to kind of like it's a little bit of a mini game, but you sort of have to work some sources and stuff and pay for these intelligence reports
Yeah.
um, with the resources
Okay.
that you get. Um, and then there's also uh, like little side missions that can happen that you can go do in between. Like again, like there's these big arcs of missions, um, these big sets of missions in each of those three major areas. And so there's little side missions that you can do as well um, to earn money or do favors for people to change your reputation with them or whatever. Um, but yeah,
That's neat.
it's strictly level based, linear. It's not open world. Um, Again, if they did a sequel, maybe they could do it like that. But I mean, again, if they remade it, then in theory it wouldn't do that.
That's
Right.
that'd be pretty sick, honestly.
It
They
definitely sounds like a
brought that
fun game.
back.
Well, specifically why it hasn't gotten one is because the game didn't do that well, and it kind of deserved to not do that well. It makes it sound like the game should have died, but like it it had a lot of these great ideas that it wasn't fully able to execute on, and the game itself suffered. The game even came out in 2010, like I said. Even for 2010, looked like ass. It looked terrible. It looked like a late stage PS2 game. Like it did not look great.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
it was ugly. Um,
I wonder
and
why.
it also, again, 2010. This is still kind of um, the the early stages of where a lot of game genres were kind of melding together. Um, so like there's a lot of like weird controls, and it gets really clunky, and
Yeah.
like they have a cover system that doesn't entirely work, and um, yeah, it's early on in the game. It's more of an RPG than it is a shooter. Like you still have to actually like aim down a sight and point and shoot, um, but it's still all that is still affected by your stats behind the scenes. So like if you're uh, if you didn't invest high enough into this this type of gun, you're not good with that type of gun, and so like it sways all over the place. And even if you're like aiming down sight looking at something and it should be a straight shot, like you'll still miss because of the RPG element of it. So it's more of an
Yeah.
RPG than it is a shooter. um, so it had a lot of problems, but the core concept and a lot of the stuff it did away from that, the shooter gameplay, I think was excellent and is what really drew me to the game. It,
Okay.
That's
just
that a lot of games. I mean, there's so many games out there that had a lot of good concepts that flopped.
yeah, and that's I mean I played this at launch because I was just super excited for it. Um, and again, it was more or less sold to me as a Mass Effect type game, except I am James Bond, super spy, extraordinaire, what have you.
That's pretty cool, though. Honestly,
I mean, yeah,
you
I
know.
mean that
Yeah.
alone is that's the selling point. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Mass Effect, so like anything like that and like that RPG type style where I get to make choices and those choices matter. Um, I really appreciate, I really love, and it's not the best written game. Like a lot of the lines of dialogue are really awkward and not well acted. Um, but at the same time, like I don't know, it sort of plays into its strengths a bit as like a bit of cheesy charm. Kind of like the old Bond movies now, where he makes all those like corny jokes. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it. I still remember it, and I still remember it fondly for those reasons. But it's it was tough to play back in the day, and I'm sure it's only gotten worse now. But I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. I
it's
apologize for the audio interruption a few minutes ago, guys.
um, but yeah, it's something that I think should come back just because of its original concept, and it's still a game that, funnily enough, has not been tried again. Like, there are so many like choice-based RPGs out there now, which is great, but a lot of them are like heavy sci-fi stuff like Mass Effect, or they're heavy fantasy like
Yeah.
Divinity: Original Sin, Dragon Age, Baldur's Gate 3, stuff like that. So I don't know,
Who
just
was that?
having that in a modern setting as again, a spy in the intelligence world. I don't know. I just think it's a really cool idea.
Who did the game again? It's my brain's drawn a blank.
Alpha Protocol?
Yeah,
Obsidian.
Obsidian. That's right. That's what's crazy is I mean like there are a lot of gaming companies out there, but there are so many you know just projects that you think a lot of games would a lot of these devs and companies would you'd think they would want to like attempt or to tackle, but like more so now you can even relate this to like the movie scene is so much stuff is getting rehashed rather than there being content that's you know brand new out of
Yeah,
nowhere type stuff.
it it is harder to be new and original to a point, but I mean, yeah, it's we do have in games and I mean in media in general, we do have an influx of stuff being redone or remade or what have you, and they only want to remake successful stuff because then in theory it has a built-in audience and yada yada, guaranteed money.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of companies don't take, I guess you could say, those kind of risks anymore.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, that's my game. Tim,
Yes.
what is your game?
I was just thinking I was going to do the little plug like you about Rockstar Table Tennis, but I won't. You already did. I didn't want to play it out. But it's so good. It would be so cool to play it. Anyways, the game that I would like to see, I would actually go more lean towards a sequel than I would a remake, would be Import Tuner Challenge. It came out back in 2006 for the Xbox 360. It was a very basic game, if you will. It was based in Japan using Japanese cars, so Toyotas, Hondas, Mitsubishis, things of that nature. And so it was kind of linear but open world at the same time. You raced on the highways. You did not get off the highways at all. There were no like regular side streets or anything. It was purely highways. And the racing system in it was you'd have different opponents. You'd line up next to them, and then it'd be like an outrun style race. You had to get so much distance from the opponent to win the race. And it was linear in the fact that, like I said, it's on the highway, but to turn around and go the opposite direction on the highway, you actually had to kind of like plan your route. You had to go through like the turnpikes and stuff like that, and go down a different section of the highway to come back to go down the other side of the highway.
Right.
So it was, like I said, it was kind of open world, kind of linear. It was another typical racing game, rags to riches. You're starting out as a nobody, and you're building your way up to the fastest racer in the city. The one thing that really drew to me is the style of racing, the style of cars. It was shortly after, like Need for Speed Underground and, the Midnight Clubs.
Yeah.
But it was also a different concept in the fact that you stayed on the highway and you just raced. So I would love to see that game come back as a sequel. Keep it true to its roots of what it is, but then, of course, add in new vehicles. They could, make it more graphically appealing. It wasn't actually an ugly game back in the day. It was actually, for 2006, it was a visually appealing game.
Yeah.
The physics weren't terrible. I would just like to see a new one in that series. I think that, that game for what it was back in 2006 was a great game, and I think it would do fairly well today. I take it that it didn't do very well since there was never an actual sequel. There was never a remake. I don't even think it's been remastered.
No, I don't think so. Because you coerced me and you rode my butt to get that game to play it with you. And I remember distinctly it, like you said, it was strictly freeway. And I remember getting in there and you're like, let's race. And you just demolished me. And you pulled a Brenden, like, hey, come play this with me. Let me beat you, essentially. And I'm surprised. It was good from what I remember. I'm surprised it never got a sequel or even, some sort of backwards compatible, enhancement or even, is it backwards compatible? God, I don't even know.
No,
I would have to look it up. Yeah. The car customization was pretty close to on par with like how Need for Speed did the Undergrounds.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be, a fun game if they brought, a sequel into it, made it a bigger map. I would still like to see it even still on the highways, but just make it a lot larger.
You'd be neat. I mean, because like I don't remember much about it besides racing on the highway. Was there different highway locations that were accurate, or?
What do you mean, like?
Well, you know
there
how
was,
like with does it? I forget. Does it take place in just one city, or is it
Yep,
just
yeah, it's all one city.
Okay.
Somewhere in Japan. I'd have to look it up if it was like a fictional based depiction of Japan or if it was like supposed to be like Tokyo highway system.
Would I mean like would if like for your idea of it coming back, like what would you want them to do with it specifically?
Like I said, I'd love for them to stay true to the roots of it staying on the highway. Obviously bring in new cars. Since we're in 2021 now, they could easily improve the physics of the game. Like I said, it wasn't bad back then, but we have better technology today, so they could make it a lot better. And then now that they're not confined to the size of the disc, they can make it a lot larger of a game also. Make the map a hell of a lot bigger.
Yeah.
This one was kind of one of those ones that I could have thrown on the remaster list, but I kind of like the idea of a sequel more than I do it being remastered. Because I think that they could take what they have and then expand from it and make it even better.
Yeah. Once again, I'd like to see that. Honestly, I mean, there's just not enough driving games. I mean, we mentioned this back, in other episodes. Just, the racing genre is so very small now.
Yeah, it's become a bit of a niche genre, especially because a lot of games have gone heavy into the simulator realm. Not that those games shouldn't exist, but that's a bad thing, because I think it's awesome that those games do exist. But, it's definitely been a byproduct. A problem with it is we've lost a lot of crazy, over-the-top racing games. And, I mean, this is kind of an example of that. It's something that just kind of didn't make it past the 360.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got. I mean, I think that's definitely a cool hook though, because I never played it personally.
Right.
But I think that's a cool hook though. Instead of just like, you racing to a finish line, you need to get far enough away from your opponent.
Yeah.
So it sets up something different. It gives it a bit of a different, unique mechanic as opposed to just being, race to the finish line. Good luck.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things that they kind of added in, so you'd race, like I said, you'd see your opponents on the map, and you'd pull up next to them and challenge them. Well, that's cool, except that opponent might bring in a couple friends. So now you're not only trying to outrun one car, you might be trying to outrun two or three at the same time.
Oh, really? It did that?
Which, yeah, it did that. Like, it added a little bit more of a challenge to it. And then the bosses, each little clique had their own bosses, and you'd have to race the bosses and outrun the bosses as well. You would get the boss's car when you beat them, but the thing that I didn't like about it is when you got the boss's car, it was slow as hell. It was junk. It wasn't.
You didn't get what he
was
raced in.
when you raced it.
Yep.
Oh, that's BS. Okay.
Yep. I remember when old games did that. That shit sucks. It's annoying.
It was highly annoying. And of course, you got to race like all the different cliques around the city to race like the top street racer in that region. And again, like I said, it's rags to riches. You're coming up from nothing, and you're trying to make it so you're the top racer in, I guess, Japan is where it's based. A very simple concept. I don't think it would be very difficult at all for them to make a sequel for that game or remake it if they wanted to.
I miss that kind of stuff, though. Honestly, I mean, more than you talk about the rags to riches, that there was something so satisfying about rolling in and just like a basic car, and pushing that thing to its limits and just slowly upgrading your vehicle as you press through, coming from nobody to becoming somebody. I miss that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, and there's still definitely rags to riches type stories, which we can definitely get into, in a later episode.
Yeah.
But
I mean, but that's more particular, at least, I guess, what I was aiming for is like that tuner thing, just.
Yep.
Yeah. There's something unique about that rags to riches compared to what games are doing nowadays.
Well, I mean, that Tune Your Culture really lends itself to that type of story, because, I mean, yeah, you can start out with a Honda Civic, a perfectly reasonable, affordable car. You don't have to, buy a Lambo that costs like $300,000.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's going to do it for this episode. This is actually going to end up being a two-parter, like the remaster was. We're really just having a lot of fun talking about these games that we'd like to see remade or have sequels to. So we really appreciate you guys sticking around for this one. Stay tuned. Definitely check out the next one when it comes out, and we will definitely see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.